You talked about an example of an organization that doesn't have a problem with generating new ideas. A pharma company, for example, it's got a very successful R&D department. There's lots of problems to go after, and they're out in the public domain as well because they're very visible. What about the organizations that have had previous success but are stagnating, and primarily because there aren't any ideas in the organization, there aren't creative people, they haven't hired them, they've hired operational people to exploit the success of the past, and they're now running out of ideas? How do you get an organization that's a bit immune to creativity and imagination to start valuing that from an innovation accounting perspective?
Right. From an innovation accounting perspective, I would usually make the case around a couple of indicators I'm very fond of. The first one that comes to mind is NPVI, New Product Vitality Index. So if you're an organization that has a reluctant leadership team, reluctant from an innovation perspective, reluctant to invest, reluctant to fund innovation, reluctant to explore new growth avenues, I will always challenge those people and make them look at their New Product Vitality Index. New Product Vitality Index means in percentages, how much of our current revenue comes from products we've launched in the past 5 years. And that's when they will realize that, hey, we actually don't have that much new revenue coming from new ideas. And by new ideas, I really mean new ideas. If you are listening to this podcast and you work in Daimler and people claim that the new A-Class is a new idea, I would totally challenge that.
Yeah.
Right? It's an iteration of the old A-Class, which is an iteration of the generation before, which is an iteration of the generation before that. So the new generation of A-Class is nothing new. However, if you are listening to this in Daimler and you're looking at the revenue that comes from the new EQ models, that definitely counts as new revenue because it's a totally different car. Now it's full electric. It has a different setup than all the other cars you've done. That should go into the NPVI calculation. The other one would be around the portfolio distribution. So essentially, how many of your current bets and how many of your current business models are core, how many adjacent, how many transformational? This portfolio distribution is going to paint a very clear picture of you with respect to the risk of disruption. If everything is core and you're only investing in core initiatives, don't be surprised if you are going to get disrupted in 5, 10, 20 years. Again, it all depends on the industry you are in, your company is in. Some industries are more prone to disruption than others.
So there are a lot of folks listening to you right now who aren't formally in an innovation role, but I can't think of a single industry in today's world where innovation isn't essential to the long-term mission and sustainability of that organization's place in their market. So in my view, everyone has a role in that process, in that innovation of the organization, an opportunity to ideate, create, challenge status quo, make recommendations, all the things that can unlock real value for the future. So what is, one piece of advice that you could leave with our listeners that is pertinent to everyone, regardless of the role that they play in their organization?
I would say that innovation is everyone's job, in my opinion, at least. However, some people might have it higher on their job descriptions. Some people might have it lower. The advice I would give to everyone is to be curious. Be curious about the work that's in front of you. Regardless if you are listening to this podcast and you are head of innovation, or you're listening to this and you are head of compliance or vendor acquisition. Be curious and try to approach everything with a curious mindset. Try to look at everything from the eyes of somebody that is seeing this for the first time, because that's where the heart of the innovation is. That's where most innovations start. When we look at things that we've seen for many times before, but we look through the lens of somebody that's seeing it for the first time. So be curious would be my advice. And also be humble. But curiousness and humbleness, they go together.
I like that.